Hi everyone, welcome to the first episode of Victoria Explains, and today we're going to talk about call options. So what is a call option? A call option gives you the right but not the obligation to buy an underlying asset at an agreed price. So this underlying option can be something like a stock or a commodity. So there are two different types of call options. Firstly, there's a European and then there's also an American option. A European option allows you to buy that underlying asset at the agreed price only at the maturity date. So for example, if the maturity is 1 year from now, you can only buy that underlying asset at that agreed price at that 1 year mark. On the other hand, for the American call option, you can buy the asset at the agreed price at any point up to the 1 year mark. So what does this mean for the buyer of the call option, right? Because it's only a right but not an obligation to buy this underlying asset, you will only exercise, or in other words, buy the underlying asset if it's favorable to you. And so the payoff of a call option, if you buy a call option, which is called long call, is this formula here up the top. So what this is saying is if the market price is favorable to you, then you'll exercise it. Otherwise, you won't exercise it and your payoff for the call is zero. The best way to explain this is through an example. So for example, I buy a call option, right? So right now, the stock price is, say, 0 times 0. Let me just try explain it. So pretend now I buy a call option in which the exercise price, which is X here, is $100, right? And you can exercise it in 1 year's time. So T is 1. Now, let's just say right now, the market price for a stock, let's just call it, I don't know, Coca-Cola, is $100. And in 1 year's time from now, the stock price has risen to $120. Now, you will exercise this option because instead of buying it for $120 in the market, you can actually buy it for $100 by exercising your option. So therefore, your payoff, which is what you gain from, having this option, is $20 because instead of buying it for $120, you can buy it for $100, right? Now, this is a favorable exercise, right? Like as in, if you exercise the option, you'll get something beneficial to you. Now, what if the stock price drops? So let's just say you have this option to buy the underlying asset, Coca-Cola stocks, for example, right? Now, what if in 1 year's time, the price actually drops to $80? Then will you have, a favorable incentive for you to exercise the option? Well, you don't, because if you exercise the option, then you can buy the asset at $100, which is the exercise price, right? But you can buy this asset in the market for $80. So why would you exercise it? And so the payoff is actually zero because you will choose not to exercise because it's cheaper for you to buy it on the market anyway. And so the payoff is zero. And so this is why we get to this formula, right, for a payoff. And if you graph this, it kind of looks like this. So this is the X is exercise price. The X is the exercise price. And if the stock price rises, you'll have the incentive to exercise it, right? Because you can buy it cheaper using your call option. So you'll buy it, and so you have a positive payoff. This is a payoff of this vertical axis. You have a positive payoff, and therefore you'll exercise. But if the stock price falls, right, if it's below your exercise price, you have no incentive to exercise because it's cheaper for you to buy it on the market anyway. So you just let this option expire, and so the value this call option brings you is zero. It's nothing. So that's why it's zero here, right? Now, but an option is not free. You have to pay money to buy it in the first place. So at the end of the day, your profit or loss is this payoff amount minus the premium, or the cost, the money you paid to buy this option. So this is, the dotted line is actually your profit and loss curve. And so it's actually negative if you don't exercise the option. Because if you think about it, you just paid money, but you're not getting any value in return. So this is called a long call, where you buy a call option. So what actually happens if you sell a call option? Selling a call option is called shorting a call. Ta-da! Anyway, so if you sell a call option, it's the total opposite in terms of payoff as if you buy it, right? So a seller will have the opposite payoff as a buyer, because if the buyer gains, then the seller has to pay them the money, right? Selling a call option means that you have to be able to provide the underlying asset to the buyer if they decide to exercise. So if you short a call, you don't actually have the optionality. If the buyer decides to exercise it, you have to provide this underlying asset. So in some cases, you don't actually provide the underlying asset and you just settle by providing like the cash difference. But we'll talk about this in another video. But overall, if you have a short option, your payoff is negative, and then that same payoff formula. And then so if you look at the payoff diagram, right, if the stock prices increase, then the buyer of the option will actually exercise, which means that you're now selling an expensive, a more expensive underlying asset, so the Coca-Cola stock at a cheaper price. So in the same example, let's just say the exercise price is $100, and then the stock price has actually increased to $120 in a year's time. The buyer of the option, the call option, chooses to exercise, so then now they can buy at $100 instead of $120. But as a seller, you actually have to go onto the market, buy it for $120, and then sell it to them for $100, which means you actually make a loss of $20, right? And that's why it's negative. But then if, as before, if the stock price drop onto exercise, so you don't have to pay anything, so you're basically zero. But, so that's the payoff, but you actually also have the profit and loss curve here as well. So the profit and loss curve is just shifted up by the amount of the premium you, or not you paid, but the buyer of the call option pays, and that's why it's shifted up.